We're glad to have you all here today for this Learning with the Learning Community. And this is the Bundled Services webinar for this mini-series that we're doing. And so we have a few different presenters on the webinar today that are going to be sharing what they've done through this learning community. It's been happening over about an 18-month period and goes through the end of August. And so they're going to be sharing some of the exciting things they've been able to do around the topic of bundled services. So as we start, we always like to start with the promise of community action. So you can say it with you there at your desk, but it is that community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So what is a learning community? Some of you may have been involved in one, maybe this particular one, but many of you, this might be kind of a new thing. So our learning communities are comprised of topical peer-to-peer learning community groups, which consist of a cadre of agencies currently working on a program or service delivery strategy related to poverty-related focus area. So we have several different types of groups that are going on, some around trauma-informed care, bundled services, financial empowerment, and so those are some of the topics we're focusing on. So some of that purpose is to analyze community action outcomes and identify effective and promising innovative practice models that alleviate the poverty with the causes and conditions of poverty. So it's really all about just building capacity to be able to fight poverty effectively. So really this anti-poverty work is just the heart of who we are. And so being able to increase the effectiveness and being able to share best practices that are happening throughout the nation is really what these learning communities strive to do. So kind of how a learning community works, generally, members attend meetings, mostly virtually for the learning communities. At the annual conventions, we've had some in-person meetings for these groups, and they generally meet to share these best practices, strategize ways to improve outcomes within the community action agency, and then also being able to learn from different subject matter experts about what has kind of been done in the field, what research is out there. And so these meetings include things like discussing what works, sharing data findings, solving problems, offering support and implementing new ideas, and again, just sharing those best practices across the nationwide network. So kind of the structure is that, these are the learning community groups. This is kind of in our whole Learning Community Resource Center. We have these several groups within that. And members of each learning community group concentrate on that same topic. They work on activities that they generate specific to goals that they are trying to achieve. Unique to the community that they represent. So of course, matches right up with the community action model. Each learning community group offers TNTA and guidance from peer experts as well as subject matter experts to help facilitate the process. Each learning community group environment is open and conducive to experimentation. We have some learning community groups that are open and others that are a little bit more closed as far as the format of them. So some of them, have kind of a core group, and then other ones are open to nationwide, just depending on their structure. But all of them allow followers to receive updates afterwards. And then eventually these successes from these groups, as well as the lesson learned, will be shared with the network. And so that's part of what we're doing today through this Learning with the Learning Community webinar, is being able to share a lot of these successes and this work that's being done. So there's been 4 phases that have been happening through these learning community groups, and we're currently in the 4th phase. So the first one was formation, which took place, of course, at the very beginning, so getting to know each other and, coming together as a group around this specific topic. Then knowledge building is happening, and subject matter experts helped in that process. Then piloting occurred, so a lot of the groups, especially the bundled services learning community, did goal plans to be able to set some goals, have some strategies in place to be able to move their agency forward in the area of bundled services. And so now we're in the practice transformation phase. And so this is where, you know, it's been piloted and now it's being implemented and really seeing what kind of transformation is taking place in these agencies. So the group focus areas, this one is bundled services. Some people refer to it as integrated services, same sort of thing. And it's about referring a customer to multiple programs so they can obtain additional services. We know that there is not one service or program that is going to lift a family out of poverty. We also know that oftentimes there's more than one need that is occurring in a person's life that is going to need to be addressed. And so this suggests kind of a change in the organization's mindset and composition that leads to an integrative approach to service delivery on every level of the agency. And it can also, this kind of thing can also occur in the community as well, integrating services across the community. So there have been several members in this group that have been very involved. And so we've got a list here on the screen that you can see. And so there's been a couple state associations that have engaged and several local agencies. Some of them have worked a little bit more on the tracking side. Some of them have worked more on the service delivery side. But this is just kind of a picture of who's been involved in this over time. There's also 3 subject matter experts that have been engaged, and Mary Virtue, Dwayne Yoder, and Gregan Crawford. So Gregan and Dwayne are both from Garrett County Community Action Corporation, and then Mary Virtue has her own consulting firm that she works out of, and so you'll be hearing a little bit from her as she gives us an introduction for this learning community.
Hi there. We welcome you to our learning community. We're very happy that you can be with us and be part of these conversations. We have, as a group, learned how to learn together in various ways, and certainly just being part of a conversation, listening to what people say is one way, a more passive way of learning, but we do find that you're going to get more out of the learning if you ask questions, make comments, and try and take some of what you're hearing and bringing it back into your organization. So as Hyacinth said a little earlier, please use the chat function. We're going to give you a chance to hear answers to some of your questions, have some conversations around them at the end of each presenter, and also again at the end of the whole 3 presentations. So today we've got 3 presenters, and what we're trying to do is kind of set a frame with Toddy Stottlemyre talking about where their organization is and some really important questions that they're wrestling with. We're then going to hear from Belva Dorsey and Angel Walker, and while we're not setting this up as a direct question answer, what we're trying to do is have you step into some of the kinds of questions that people are pondering with what Tawny's talking about, and then hear what people have done, first with Belva and Angel, and then with Randa Clark. And as I said, at the end of each of these sessions, each of these presentations, we'll have a little time to respond to your questions. So without anything more, let's have Tawny start with her presentation. Thank you.
So Tawny, you're on. Yep. So please stand by for just a second. It looks like Tanya's having some issues with her audio. We're going to try to get her sorted out. Please give us just a minute and she'll be on with us. Thank you so much for your patience.
Hi there, this is Tawny. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're coming.
Okay. Well, you know, the best laid plans. Did we lose me at some point, or should I just start over?
We didn't hear any of it, so.
Okay, well, it was brilliant, let me tell you that. So let me just kind of go through that briefly. Again, this is Tawny Stottlemyre. Our agency is Community Action Incorporated in Topeka, Kansas. I would describe us as a small to medium-sized community action agency. We have a paid staff of 75 and an annual budget of just under $6 million. We operate the usual cohort of programs in housing, weatherization, Head Start, and a wide variety of direct services through CSBG. This is my 29th year in the community action industry, but I am just approaching 3 years as the executive director of this community action agency. So I use that to set the stage for you on the information that you're about to hear. I call our current progress, a work in progress, as you see on the screen. Our agency is committed to a bundled services approach with the ultimate goal of being able to measurably enhance the positive results our customers can experience. So I've worked very hard to set this out as a vision from the top. We've achieved buy-in from our board of directors. And our leadership team members on staff have participated in a handful of exercises and discussions around the issue. We've developed an agency-based theory of change, evaluated where our current programs and services exist within that theory, and then we've had several group discussions regarding different impressions of a bundled services concept. What we're working towards right now is an internal focus on bundling services as opposed to a multi-agency or community-based approach. I would say that when I began work at this organization, I think it's fair to say that there was virtually no intentional connectivity going on between services. So we are focused internally. We have a team set up for this project. We've assigned a project lead team member that is the community services director, and he's leading the planning and implementation of a bundled services delivery approach. We've also hired an assistant director for that department to ensure that the director has the time available to devote the attention that the new endeavor needs so that the assistant can assume more of the day-to-day and the actual service delivery of the department. And then in addition to that, we've secured a paid intern from our local Washburn University who's been assigned to work closely with the project lead in planning and testing various applications of the concept. So this is all just to say that we've got the executive leadership and the board engaged. We've assigned a project lead. We've freed up some of his time and capacity and brought in extra assistance. So we're not just invested in voice, but also in actual resources. In addition to having a team, we have a few barriers, and I want to describe those to you briefly. The first one is buy-in from program directors. I would describe that as being lukewarm. When we've had conversations about this, I feel like while they intellectually appreciate the concept, of maximizing resources available for a customer. Actually moving into changing the way they do business is another story. So I put some kind of quotes up there for you of the resistance that we've heard at meetings. You know, our program is just so different than everybody else's program, and it doesn't seem like our regulations and the way we do business is going to make this a possibility for me, you know, for us to change and mesh. Or our staff were hired to deliver this type of service. This is what they're experts in, this is what they want to do, this is what their careers are, and we don't really have the time or the desire to kind of spread ourselves out in a more agency-wide type of approach. So I've approached it from a mission perspective, how important this can be towards helping us achieve our mission. And as I said, I believe our team gets it, but there certainly are barriers being thrown up to actually doing something beyond getting it. Another barrier that we have is agency-wide data systems. Like many of you, we've got multiple proprietary required systems in use, and I'm a big believer in not duplicating effort if we don't need to. So I'm trying to avoid setting up a system where we would have to do double data entry in order to be able to easily share information about customers from department to department. So one of our real questions is how to effectively build that communication pipeline that would make bundled services, we feel, go a lot smoother in implementation. And then something that I think we really need to pay attention to but don't have a lot of clear answers on at this point, nor have we done a lot of active planning, is how to measure and evaluate our outcomes. I think we need to be planning now on how that's going to happen, and what we are doing is taking some nice baby steps towards one department, you know, being more intentional about referring customers to another department, and that we hope something really good turns up from that. But we really haven't spent time discussing and researching and reaching agreement on how we know we're going to end up at a place where we've got enough information to tell us a year or 6 years from now if we've really made progress. So we are doing that basic INR, information referral, from the department that our project lead supervises. That's our CSBG Community Services Department. We're considering a process map of really mapping out the customer experience in each of the programs and finding where the crossroads are as a way of breaking down that barrier about how different our program is and how there really isn't any connection between us and what's going on elsewhere. But honestly, I wonder how much resource we'd have to invest in that process and what the impact would be, because we know that data is so effective at changing people's minds that I'm not sure that would be the most productive route for us to go, but it is something we've considered. And then finally, to help break down that other barrier, program directors, leadership team members are seeing goals to the bundled services concept appear in their performance assessment goals. So things that we can measure, things that will give them very specific ways to be a part of moving this process forward, and then that will be part of their performance evaluation. So we do have some baby steps. When we started this process, we were asked to rate, you know, how do you feel you're doing right now on a bundled services approach? And you can see ours was somewhat dismal. We were at a 1 out of a possible scale of 5. We were asked to consider that question today, and I think with what we've done so far and plans for where we can go, I'm a lot more optimistic. I put us at a 3.5. We're clearly not there yet and have a lot more to do. So we are going to continue moving this process forward. We're a little confused. We have a lot of questions, but we're going to try to work forward with grace, dignity, and confidence, and I think we will get there. It's just going to take us a little longer than I was hoping for. So that's what I have to share with you. I'm excited to hear what my colleagues have to say about the progress that they've made. We always learn so much when we talk to each other. Thanks for this opportunity. Mary?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tawny. I'll let Hyacinth tell us if we've got some comments in the chat box, but before we move to that, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how your board sees this. You talked about staff resistance as a barrier and the commitment of the board. I'm wondering how you describe the board's commitment. What about bundled services makes sense to them? Why are they moving forward with you on this?
Good question. Let me first tell you that we have a 33-member board of directors, which in and of itself is pretty exciting. But there has been zero resistance when we talk about this, and I think it is because the outcome makes so much more sense. We are able to talk about how bundling services will, we perceive that it will produce stronger anti-poverty outcomes for the customer, and that it will maximize our resources internally, because, you know, we are able to share data, and we are able, if we get to that point. So I think it makes really good sense to the board. They, I think, are able to buy into it pretty easily because they don't have to imagine the day-to-day of actual implementation.
And then just one other quick question. Another challenge that people often face is the resources to cover the exploration as you're doing the work you're doing now, but also moving forward, thinking about how you're going to pay for this. So I wonder what resources you're using to get your project lead in place, and also the support that you talked about from the local university.
Well, thank goodness for the Community Services Block Grant and its amazing flexibility in what it lets local agencies do. It is not as if we just had, you know, 10 or 20 extra $1,000 sitting around. So we did have to rearrange some things and look at how things were being funded in order to get to the place we are today. The university's been wonderful. Part of what's very helpful with the intern is that the program that he is in is a matched pay program, so we're not paying the full cost of that individual's salary. So that kind of partnership has helped us out a lot. But I would say CSBG is our go-to initially to help make this transformation happen.
Terrific. Yeah, that is not surprising, but thank you for telling us. Hyacinth, are there any questions that you think would be good for Tawny to answer now, or should we move on to our next presenter?
Sure. So we actually have one question and a comment. So some people are sharing their frustrations on the phone. So one of our attendees shared, we have a design team in place here in Maine at Community Concepts that's working on rolling out a universal intake pilot that's going to be starting at the beginning of May. She is saying that they have also experienced internal resistance and continue to work through these challenges. She says she feels like she made good progress, and our key staff are now all included in the design phase. We work to include our board chair on the design team as well to demonstrate board commitment and senior staff commitment. So we hear what you're going through, and we appreciate what you're sharing. So some similar frustrations and experiences shared there. A question that we had came in from another attendee mentioned that you quoted that some of the resistance comments of staff or supervisors that weren't hired to provide information on other programs. You wanted to know if you were able to address that when you were hiring new employees, such as did you put things about their expectation or maybe role in bundling and integrating services? Did you incorporate that perhaps into their job description or their contracts? How did you work to address some of those issues in hiring new employees?
That is a great question, and thank you for asking it, and also thanks, Maine, for feeling the pain. We haven't formalized that, although job descriptions do have flowery languages about, supporting the agency's overall mission. But I think we have put some things in place that are leading us down that road. Every employee that gets hired has to go through what we call the scary executive director interview. And that's where I just sit down with them personally and talk about the vision for the agency and the expectations of being able to support the mission and being able to focus outside of the program they're being hired in. So that's kind of a new approach that I feel like may be working towards that end. And then we've instituted a new performance assessment system that goes a long ways. It's evidence-based and has measurable goals to which people are accountable. So that will be another way that we can infiltrate, if you will, that system of helping people understand that, we're much bigger than the job they were hired specifically to do. But I would welcome other ideas.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, by the way, Connie. No other questions or comments have come in at the moment. But if you do have any questions for Tanya as we go forward, please feel free to send them into the chat. We'll have another Q&A session towards the end, as Mary discussed. But thank you so much, Tanya. Mary or Courtney, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Tawny. One of the things that I didn't mention that is really key to successful learning is being both thoughtful and honest about what you're dealing with. So it's great to have somebody be able to talk about the barriers in such specific ways, but being so honest about it so that when you look forward and others, and we had the person from Maine say, we get it, that's the kind of reinforcement that makes it possible to ask hard questions and make the changes that need to happen. So I'm going to move this along and have Angel Walker and Belva Dorsey tell us a little bit about their experience. Thank you both.
Services program. And I have with me Angel Walker, who is the program manager for our community services department. The name of our organization is Enrichment Services Program. Our central office is located in Columbus, Georgia. Right now we have about 300 employees, and our annual budget is about $13 million. And we're spread out over 9 counties, 8 counties in Georgia and 1 county in Alabama. And our core services fall under 4 categories. And they include education, which is early Head Start, pre-K, employment training, program stabilizing services, as well as family strengthening services. And so this afternoon, Angel and I are going to kind of tag team this presentation. But we wanted to first start by sharing with you why we decided to begin this journey. And so the main reason we wanted to start moving down this road for integrated or bundled services is because we wanted to focus on a unified approach as an organization. For so many years, we were operating in silos. And we would hear departmental staff or program staff say, well, this is a Head Start customer, or this is a employment training customer versus this is an ESP customer. So again, we wanted to move away from those silos. And then we also wanted to reduce or eliminate the them versus us mentality, because we were seeing a lot of that as well. And then ultimately, we wanted to have a greater or better outcomes, reach greater or better outcomes for our families. And so when we first started the program or this approach, we rated ourselves at a 3.5 because that's where we were at the beginning of this particular bundling services initiative. So when we think about our desired destination, we really want to see that everything is fully integrated. We want a fully integrated approach to client or customer services. We want the full coordination between our departments, And again, getting away from those silos. And we also ultimately want to have an effective way to move our families to and towards self-sufficiency. So we want to share some of the key ingredients we believe are very important as a part of a bundling services approach. In our opinion, we do feel like the CEO or ED should serve as a champion or at least a co-champion for this initiative. It will not work if the leader or the leaders of the organizations do not buy in and champion this effort. We also found that we needed to have a team that included staff from different departments and even the staff who were going to be involved in the whole integration or bundling services process involved as a part of the team. We also realized that, since we were trying to integrate services between departments, we needed to talk about the program cycles that existed. So, for example, in our community services department, the team members there, they administer the LIHEAP program. And so we had to talk about, when are those cycles when LIHEAP gets started? And how much time do staff in that department have to focus on, LIHEAP? Or even when we look at our Early Head Start and Head Start program, when is the focus going to be on 45 and 90-day requirements? So again, those are some things that we had to really talk about and talk through. But ultimately, we wanted everybody to know that our focus is on our mission and our goal, and that's to help families become self-sufficient. So we feel like having that focus on the ultimate goal of the agency is critical. We have some more key ingredients to share. For us, we are now utilizing one unified tracking system. So I will just share this. Before I became the CEO for the organization, I was our Head Start director. And so I know for many organizations that operate Head Start and other services, sometimes Head Start staff will say, oh, no, we have to use this particular tracking system. Well, we actually moved away from the tracking system we were using before, and I won't call that name, but now we are all in our community services department and in our early childhood department, we're using one unified tracking system. And we feel like that's important for us because now we can determine what kind of services a customer is receiving by our entire organization. We also have moved toward a single entry point for intake. So for our customers, when they want to receive services, they come to our neighborhood service center. And that's the common, I'll say the common place in each of our 8 counties in Georgia. We have a neighborhood service center. And so that allows us to make better use of our resources, time of staff, even time of our customers. And it also eliminates duplicated efforts. So now that all of our customers are coming through that single entry point, customers don't have to go to a neighborhood service center and answer questions like, well, what's your name? What's your address? What's your telephone number? And then go to our Head Start Center and answer those same questions. So we wanted to eliminate those duplicated efforts. We also believe there has to be the collaboration and coordination between departments. And in our case, we identified our target customer, because we believe that with this integrated approach, this bundling services approach, we were not going to be able to incorporate, for example, our LIHEAP customers because we only see them one time. And so we're focusing on those customers we have that deep touch with, the ones that we're going to see maybe over a period of 3 months or even up to 5 years. We also feel like it's important to have a shared vision, and it's important to share the why with all of your team members so that you can have the buy-in. And then we also, as a part of our journey, we had to do an assessment of all of the programs that we were offering to ensure that they were all aligning with our mission. And so as a part of this process, we did eliminate certain programs. For example, the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, we eliminated that because it did not align with the mission of our organization. So we have a few more key ingredients that we're going to run through really quickly because we don't want to run out of our time. But with the next slide, Angel, we also have written procedures. We have joint meetings between our departments because we feel like that is so important. monitoring, internal monitoring is critical. It's also important to get feedback from staff to ensure that there is that buy-in. And there are times when staff can give you great feedback that will lead to some type of course adjustment. And ongoing communication is also very critical as a part of this process. Where we were, we did hear comments like, we're doing their job, or these are our customers. So we were there. And so we know that a lot of organizations that start on this journey, you may find yourself in that place as well. So, Angel, you want to talk about some of the steps we've taken?
Okay, some of the steps that we have taken, we have a case managers retreat every year with the leadership in our community services department and also in our early childhood department. And the purpose of these retreats and meetings is to get everyone together and share successes or share challenges and get everyone there on one accord so we can all be in together as we move through the process. We've also developed procedures to go along with the bundling services approach. We understand that new people come in and you know, some people might move to different positions, so we wanted to make sure that we have some type of formalized and written procedures so everyone could be on the same page. Also with our joint trainings, we have joint trainings between the site coordinators for the Community Services Department and also with the FSWs and other key staff in the Early Childhood Department in order to talk about the families that we have, because there are shared families now. So during these trainings, we talk about different strategies or different techniques to move the families to the next level. We talk about what we can do to enhance, you know, the quality of services that we are providing and different things of that nature. As far as our area of focus is implementing a systematic approach to identifying bundled services that families are eligible for when intake is completed. Like Ms. Dorsey stated before, when we first began this journey, our rating was a 3.5, but now we feel that our rating is now a 4. We still have a little ways to go because we want to still do a few more things to make this a super success, as we know this can be. And right now we're rating ourselves at a 4. So our next steps are a finalization of a bundling services report. This report right here will be a customized report that can be retrieved out of our joint database that we have that will actually show the progress and the movement of the clients who are enrolled in our self-sufficiency programs and also in our employment and training programs. We also are in the process of refining our procedures, developing monitoring tools and processes so we can make sure that we are going back and monitoring the system to ensure that the outcomes, activities, and services that we are providing to the customers are reflected in the system so we can make sure that we are able to show, you know, what the outcomes actually are. And we also want to see about having our partners to be able to input information on the clients into our database, and we feel like that will show a collective impact between our agency and the partners within the community. And so that is our presentation for Moving Families to Self-Sufficiency from Enrichment Services Program.
Well, thank you, both of you. You've been part of the learning community in the first iteration and now this one. And so it's always great to hear what you're up to and how much you've accomplished in the last few years. It's just wonderful and so encouraging. One of the things that you mentioned was getting feedback from staff. And I wonder what mechanisms you're using to do that, how you go about that. Because that's an important idea. It keeps people engaged, and I just wonder what processes you might share.
Well, some of the ways that we are getting the employee feedback is through the joint meetings. So when we have the meetings between what we'll just call our case managers, we're asking them, you know, what's working well with this process? What are some of the challenges? And then we also talk about strategies for overcoming those challenges. And then Angel also mentioned our case managers retreat that we have, that we've started conducting. And so even during that time, we give staff an opportunity to break up into different groups and identify strategies for strengthening the process.
Terrific. Yeah, that and so you're getting feedback, but you're also asking them to learn from each other and come up with ideas. That's just marvelous. Great. Another question, and this goes to where you're heading moving forward, talking about collective impact with your partners. How engaged have your partners been in your work to date? Are they aware of what you're aiming to do? Is this concept of collective impact something you've discussed?
Not all of our customers are aware, but some of them are. And so we have had a chance to talk to some customers about capturing that collective impact, or being able to measure, I guess, that collective impact by sharing data on common customers. And so we haven't had conversations with everybody yet, but we have had conversations with a few of our partners who are ready to engage in that type of process.
Great, yeah, and that sort of gradual inclusion sounds pretty wise. Hyacinth, I wonder if you have more questions and comments to relay to people now? Okay, I'm not hearing Hyacinth, and I do not at this point have access to what the chat comments are. So maybe what we'll do is pick up those questions at a later point. I'd like to, oh good, thank you. Okay, I just couldn't hear you. Okay, go ahead.
That's because I was on mute, so it would be hard for anyone to hear me, so sorry about that. So we did actually get quite a few questions in during your presentation, so I was saying thank you, ladies, because obviously your presentation resonated with a lot of the people on the line. So the first question that we have that came in actually states, which services are actually being considered for your bundling services approach or your common intake process? Are there any services that you found were easier to align than others?
Okay. And so I'll just restate the question. So which services are we including in the bundling services approach, and then which ones were easier to align?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the services that we are including in our bundling services approach include all of our early childhood services, so early Head Start, pre-K, even with our Early Head Start Child Care Partnership, as well as our employment training programs, which include nurse aid training, our CDL training, and facility maintenance. And so we did find that it was easier to bundle those services versus LIHEAP, for example, because, again, we're only going to see many of those customers one time. However, there are some of our early childhood or employment training families who do also receive LIHEAP, so we're able to capture that information in the system. But those are the two, those are the focus programs, if you will, that we're bundling at this time.
Great, thank you for that. So another question that came in was, and a couple people actually asked this as I'm looking through, could you talk more about the unified tracking system that you're using? Is that something that you all developed internally, or was that a commercial product that you all researched and purchased for your agency?
Well, the tracking system that we are using is called EasyTrack. And so in the state of Georgia, all community action agencies are utilizing that system, you know, for our community services block grant. And so it had that, you know, it had the capacity to track anything in the area of CSBG. And so we worked with the developer to develop a early childhood module, which has been developed, and we've actually found that it's able to capture information and report information better than the other system that we were using previously. So, you know, I guess the question has a twofold answer. Yes, there was a system that was already available for part of our services, but we did work with the developer to create the early childhood module.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Another question we have that came in, have any issues of confidentiality arisen across excuse me, some of your cross-community partner information sharing? And if so, how have you dealt with these issues?
Well, right now we aren't there yet with, you know, sharing information with our partners. That's one of our next steps. And so the way that we're planning on addressing that, though, is asking our partners to sign a release form when they come in as a part of their intake, whether it's our intake or the intake for our partner. And so once they sign that release of information form, it will allow us to share certain information, you know, with our partners so that we are able to, again, capture how we're impacting that family collectively throughout our community.
Great. And our next presenter, Randa Clark, actually said he's happy to address that, that particular question during his section of the presentation. That's something that he's dealt with in his approach with his organization. So we'll talk a little bit more about that issue in the next segment of the presentation. But thank you for sharing your plans for that, Selva and Angel. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. So Mary, I'll turn it over to you if you want to introduce Rand.
Sure. So Randa Clark has been someone I've been talking back and forth with as we've thought about this particular webinar, and he and Belva and Angel and Tawny and I have had some fun going back and forth, but one of the things I love about Rand is he likes to visualize what he's thinking. So one of my first conversations with him had him sending me his whiteboard, a snapshot of his whiteboard. And I think what you're going to see now is a kind of an improved version of that whiteboard. So Rand, it'll be great to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you. It's good to join you all today. So I am the Community of Care Navigator in Douglas County, Colorado. Douglas County is a suburb of the Denver metro area. We're a public community action agency. So for all of you who have big CSBG budgets and lots of staff, I am the only staff. I manage our CSBG program, and our budget is very small. It's about $80,000 a year with the community service block grant funds. Well, about 5 years ago, we went down a path of completely reshaping how we use those funds. We were discouraged with the number of folks that were kind of caught in the cycle of needing assistance, and we really did not feel like we had any good way of helping folks achieve self-sufficiency. And so to make a long story short, we really stumbled upon bundled services. For almost 4 years now, we have been bundling services, not as a single entity agency, but across agencies. We now have 13 partners. They're all different agencies, everything from government human service entities to things like the school district, all of our major food banks, faith-based organizations, domestic violence, mental health providers, our housing providers, all have come together to integrate services together to bundle those services around the folks that we serve. Over the last 2 years, we've seen about 65% of those that we serve obtain self-sufficiency. About 86% are obtaining positive housing incomes, and almost 80%, 79 and change, are increasing their employment. And so what I hope to share with you today is a little bit of what we've done this last year, which is said, hey, we're bundling. How do we do it better? How do we become more strategic in how we bundle? And how do we integrate data better so that we can go to scale? I'll include some conversations around the data we've collected, but also how we've used a data system to integrate across all 13 of those agencies, so we really can see that collective data impact. But I want to start with what for me has really been my journey this year through this learning community, which is really rethinking why we bundle services and how we bundle services. As a learning community, we've had a lot of conversations on what is a bundle, What should we bundle? What should we not bundle? What's easy to bundle? What makes sense? And I've taken a step back, and there's been a lot of conversation, and maybe some of you have heard or been engaged in these conversations around transactional services versus transformational services. Transactional services being things that we just deliver because folks are able to, or need that service, and it's very just, you need it, I have it, I give it to you. Versus transformational services that are really services that are designed to change, to create change, to create transformation, something different happening. And I think in a bundled approach, we certainly want to talk about both. It's not just transactional, it's not just transformational, but we can bundle both types of services. Go to the next slide. On top of the transactional and transformational, though, I wanted to add another dimension, and that was this concept of uniform and unique. In the uniform and unique approach, there are a lot of things that we give that is uniform. Everybody gets the same thing. If you walk into Catholic Charities office in my community, if you need food, they're going to give everybody essentially the same box of food. It's a very transactional, uniform service. Whereas if you go to one of our other food banks, they have an open food market. They transact the service. You need food, we have food, we give it to you, but it's unique because everybody can walk out of that food bank with different food. They give them like food bank bucks, and they have 35 credits today, and they can go shopping for whatever they need, but everything is unique. And so as we started looking at how we bundled services, we really wanted to begin to ask the question, how do we bundle within sort of these four quadrants of services that were transactional and uniform, services that were transactional and unique, transformational, uniform, transformational, unique. And so let me put a little framework and concept to this. I think it will help maybe some of you worried or concerned about what bundles make sense and how they work together. Let me talk to you about maybe some of how these bundles might work. In the provision of service model, which is our next slide, we're basically talking about a case management style where our staff or our volunteers are working to determine whether someone is eligible. And so the job of the staff is determination. Our outcomes are delivery. Can we deliver this right service to the right person at the right time? And really the data we're collecting is eligibility data. Do they meet the criteria to receive that same service? But we can bundle uniform transactional services. In my community, we make sure that everybody that walks into our program has SNAP and Medicaid, and if necessary and needed, TANF. Those are core services to our human services team, and we want to make sure that everybody has those. And so we even bundle at that very basic level of uniform and transactional, those core stability needs. In the next slide, you'll see some of what we bundle in our transactional unique stuff. This is more of a navigation style or approach. Our case management style is about connection and referral, finding out what people need and making the right connection points, either to the right agency, the right organization, the right department, the right service need. The outcome here really is access. Can people access what they need? Everything is going to be a little bit different. Some folks might need access to one set of things. Some folks might be able to need access to other things, but we can bundle around what those needs are. And we could look at an assessment and we could do a very good assessment and say, hey, you need these 10 things, and we're going to refer and integrate those things and bundle them together, but there still is a sense of connection. And really our data here is service records. Can we take the service records of what that family needs, can we put them together, and we're tracking, did we get them the right service? Did we identify the right service? Did we get them the right service? Before we go to the top, I want to make sure, though, that what we see on this bottom half, these bottom two quadrants, are really staff-intensive and staff-based processes, right? You need somebody to determine if they're eligible. You need somebody as a staff, they're sort of in charge of, can we connect the right things? Did I ask the right questions? Did I identify the right needs? And did I connect them to the right place? And it really is dependent on us as staff. As we move above the line towards those transformational quadrants, we start to see the client or the customer or the guest be more in control. And so in this top left, we have what I call prescriptive processes and prescriptive types of scenarios. The case management style is very directed. Well, I'm going to direct you down a path. That's the uniform part, but that path is going to lead to transformation. The outcome is typically about completion. Did you complete a process or complete a path, or did you complete a program? There's a lot of planning data about, are they doing the right things along the steps? And we can bundle around some of these directed plans. So a really good example of something up in this quadrant would be like a 12-step program, or a parenting program, or a financial health class, where folks really are following all the same uniform steps. They lead to transformation. We have a plan that they are following, but we can bundle. For instance, we know somebody that's going to go through a workforce development plan is going to bundle things along the way. They need a resume class. They need a, maybe a basic computer skills class, maybe a life skills class so that they show up on time and they know how to dress. Maybe they need access to a Dress for Success program. And so we still can bundle around those prescriptive domains. And then finally, over in the transformational unique quadrant, we have a generative model of care. In the human services world right now, there is a new sense of beyond just integrated services. This generative process where a team of people, including the customer and care managers and people from the community, come together and they work together to generate ideas, to generate solutions, to generate opportunities to become self-sufficient. So the case management style is very highly engagement-based. You see things like wraparound motivational interviewing. The outcomes really are change at its purest sense, that we really see that change happen. Our data is change. If we're going to do an assessment at the beginning to identify what their needs are, we need to do an assessment at the end to identify what changes we've seen in that family's life. And the bundles really are, it's the a la carte, right? The customer is going to sit there and select what they want. I go to Panera Bread every once in a while, and they have the pick two menu for lunch. It's great. I can pick two different things every time. I'm creating my own. I'm not just deciding on, meal number 3. I can create my own bundle, and that's something we really see up here in this generative model. And so along the way, that caused us to rethink and to redo this last year, our theory of transformation. And so I put it up here just so you can see what it looks like for us. We have a picture of a butterfly. It's that sort of image for us of what transformation is all about. But you'll begin to see how we have addressed sort of our bundles. Down the bottom left, we have stability, and we bundle around stability first. We start there. We say, are their safety needs, their basic needs, and their well-being being all met in a customer that we see? So we want to make sure that they are safe. So our domestic violence team is a part of the assessment early on. We have access to child welfare, and we're making sure those kiddos are safe. We want to make sure their basic needs are met, so we're bundling food and shelter. Also wellness, so we have Medicaid, doctors, and access to doctors in place, and we also have our mental health agency on board. And we bundle early on around those stability things, and one of the things we've been working on this year is identifying where those gaps are in stability early and making sure that those services are bundled across our community in that family's life. The second one is capacity. It's in that top left corner. This is really an executive function realm for us. We look at self-management to time and organization, problem solving, self-restraint, self-motivation, self-regulation, motion. There's a lot of life skill that happens up in here, a lot of mental health and therapy that happens up in here, but we want to make sure that our folks have capacity and we're bundling those capacity tools. Over on the right-hand side, then we move into our capability. These are those sort of domain-based bundles. Meaning for work, our employment programs, our ready-to-work programs, our financial health and our financial capability, and we equip our care managers and facilitators to work with folks on their financial health. And then social capital, bringing all of those pieces together. And we bundle still around domains primarily, but there's a lot of that sense that folks really pick and choose what they need up in this capability. And then down to the opportunity, these are really community-oriented outcomes around access to opportunities, around access to employment, and access to housing. And we want to make sure that as a community we have identified where our gaps in access are. And so those 4 quadrants have led to this theory of transformation. Now, we're going to put those 4 quadrants back up, and I want to show you sort of how we walk a customer through our quadrants. As you can see, we exist in our program in all the quadrants. There's no one right quadrant. There's no one wrong quadrant. You can bundle throughout the different quadrants. You're capturing data throughout the different quadrants, but really the customer experience for us starts down in that stability. It's basic eligibility. Are you eligible, and do we need those stability pieces for SNAP and TANF and Medicaid and shelter, domestic violence, child welfare? We then very quickly, for us, we try to move up into that top right and that transformation unique to using that generative approach. We use a wraparound engagement style with our customers to determine why they want to see transformation in their life. Then we move over and we spend a lot of time over in that capacity and capability over in our process, in those process-driven areas of time management and organization and therapy, financial health, job training, education. We spend a lot of time there. And then finally down in the opportunity place. to make sure that folks have access to housing and childcare and employment and transportation. Those tend to be the big barriers in our community. Now, what's unique about our approach is that we're not one agency. We are 13 agencies, and so we have spent a lot of time this year developing our data system to be able to track this process, to be able to track all these different things across the realm. We have 13 agencies. We all share a common data system. We all have a single entry system that we use so that a customer coming to any one of those agencies is going to be walks through the same process of application and eligibility determination and assessment. We have a common assessment built into that as well. It feeds then into our Douglas County Cares process, but it also feeds into some other community-wide things such as our winter shelter network and our winter weather care, because it snows here in Colorado and we have to pay attention to those things. And so we use that system. We have had some struggle with getting everybody on the same page, but I'll say this sort of generically. I think how we've overcome the issue of shared data for us has been that we haven't focused on the data, we focused on the customer. I believe that when we focus on sharing data, it's kind of like an arranged marriage, and it's not always going to work. I think what we've gone away from is not that we share data, it's that we share customers. And if we're going to share customers, I think sharing data becomes natural. If we aren't just going to share customers and we're also going to share outcomes, I think that's really hard for some agencies to understand, is that, hey, this isn't my outcome, this isn't your outcome, this is the customer's outcome, and we share in that transformation, we share in that victory, we share in that outcome. And then the other big thing we've really had to wrestle with, but I think it flows out of the same mentality, is that we have to share funding. And so we're fortunate in this particular environment. I mentioned early on, we only get $70,000 to $80,000 in CSBG funding every year, but through these partnerships and the shared funding and the shared outcomes and the shared customers, we leverage that into about $2.5 million worth of service across all of our 13 partners. That's how we're able to get the outcomes, because we don't look at it as my funding or your funding or my outcome or your outcome. It really is a shared customer. It's their data, not my data. It's their outcome, and the funding really is not for my agency. The funding is for the customer. And so really we've approached it that way, and it's made sharing data easier. And when we do have barriers around language and language in a release of information, we do have barriers around what we're going to do with a family. We're really able to identify that because we have those same values, or overcome those because we have those same values in place. And so really for us this year, as we look at bundling services, I think we sort of stumbled into it. When we started this, we were doing a pretty good job of integrating and bundling. I think what we've learned this year is how to be more strategic. I think we've learned how to use data and strategy in order to grow our capacity and go to scale. A year ago, we would not have been able to help as many folks as we can help now, but because we have been more intentional in our understanding of our system of care, understanding how we bundle services within that system of care, and then having the data system behind it to make it happen across all the different agencies, we really are much more capable now of going to scale and serving more folks as we head towards the future. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Mary and be happy to answer some questions and engage further in the conversation.
Terrific, Rand. Thank you. I'm curious, and this is asking a lot of Angel and Belva to map themselves on your map, but I think it might help us understand, and I'm now going back to the previous slide, Hyacinth. It's just, I'm wondering if that makes sense in your world, if Angel or Belva, to talk your way through it, because I know you've thought about the bundle of services you're going to provide and how it reaches the goals of the organization. And is this another way to see it? Is this helpful for you? I'll let you respond to that. And Tawny, I'm going to ask you the same sort of question to see if this is useful as you think about how you make the decisions about what to bundle.
Hi, this is Angel. Yes, I do think that this is definitely beneficial. I was sitting here taking notes on it, actually. So when we do come together and start to have that conversation on how we're going to, build the capacity within the community, I really like, these are, our clients, this is their funding, you know, the shared funding approach. I really do like that because, you know, it's a good thing to leverage funds because we do know that, you know, CSBG funding is very small. And sometimes, you know, we won't be able to do everything. And that's the reason to have the partners come in so we can all work together for the client to, you know, provide that holistic approach to moving them to and towards self-sufficiency. So I'm really, really liking this, and I definitely am going, when we get ready to have the meeting and those conversations, we're definitely going to look at this and see if we can't use this model, you know, and the information that was provided to help us further where we're trying to go, if that makes sense.
Certainly does. Thank you. Tawny, do you want to step into this?
So I'm feeling pretty inadequate right now. But what I'm really liking from what I see here is the overlay of the theory, what we would call the theory of change, organizationally to the bundling of services. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around, you know, I thought I figured out how they went together, but this is an entirely different way of looking at that. So I want to spend more time with it and see if it resonates internally with our organization and the leaders here too.
Yeah, it isn't. I mean, to look at someone else's, and I, as I said at the beginning, I really love that Rand thinks in terms of visualizing stuff. But I also realize that to put yourself in someone else's mental picture is a little tricky. And so that's why I was kind of curious about how you all would respond to it. And Hyacinth, maybe we'll turn over to other questions that people have sent in, and then we can work and we can go back to more of a panel discussion after that.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. So we have one question that has come in so far, and they wanted to hear from you, Rand, if you could explain a little bit more about how kind of your staffing works. Given that there are 13 organizations within your coalition, they wanted to know, do you have paid staff for Douglas County Cares? What is your staff structure like?
That's a good question. So the reality is that no, we don't have, as Douglas County Cares as an entity does not have paid staff. I am the only paid staff, and my job really is to manage the program. When we started this a few years ago, our pitch to our partner agencies was to say, hey, we want to use our funding and our collective resources to help folks move to self-sufficiency, and we know that probably none of us by ourselves can do that. It's going to take everybody. And so instead of one agency trying to take it on and trying to hire a bunch of staff, which we know is costly and traditionally very difficult given most of our funding sources, we said, hey, what if we could get 10 agencies together, and each of those 10 agencies was willing to help 5 or 6 families a year through a strategic process that we defined locally and that we trained locally, and we provided the resources to help develop that staff. And we said, hey, what if each agency would take 5 to 6 families a year and try to move them to self-sufficiency? Could we make a dent? Could we make a start? And so instead of hiring a bunch of new staff, we went to those 13 agencies and said, hey, of the folks you're serving this year, would you find 5 of them, and would you be willing to take your staff and spend the extra time with that person to help them get to self-sufficiency? And then we used some collective funding to then put funding behind meeting the needs and the barriers that were assessed into that with that family. So we used it to help cover rent or any number of different sort of services along the way. And what we found is that maybe now I think I have one agency that has decided they love this so much they have a full-time staff person that they are funding that walks people through this process. We have a couple of agencies that are all volunteers, and so they have high-capacity volunteers, and they have 10 volunteers, and each volunteer walks with one family. Then when they're done with that one family, they move on and do the next and walk and facilitate care management with the next family. And so been kind of a various different ways how we staff it, but it really started with this idea of, hey, what if we all work together, because we're going to do it anyways, because we know that our families need all of the things. They're coming to us anyways, that shared customer. What if we all tried to be strategic with just one with 5 families a year, and let's work together. Let's bundle what we're doing. Let's put one agency sort of in the lead of that by providing the care management, and then bundle everything else we're doing and just trust that other agency with their facilitator to help work with that family.
Okay, Hyacinth, if you don't have other questions, I do want to ask the panelists a little bit about this question that everybody has on their mind of how to make the political case for community action. And I heard in the course of what you said, Rand, some statistics that you had about how successful this program was. And I wonder if you have, you specifically, but also Angel and Belva and Tawny, have thought about bundled services in the context of making the case for community action, the political case, for ongoing support. Rand?
Well, we certainly have, and we make a lot of our case around the leveraging of local dollars, the leveraging of federal dollars, and how we make this all work. And so we do have the data, our outcome data, and so part of this process this year, and we've talked about data systems earlier, was having a robust data system to be able to track our outcomes across the agencies, to be able to track the services provided across the agencies. And in doing that, then when we're able to track the outcome and track the services across all the agencies, we're really able to then come up with a really good qualified data-driven number around what $1 of, what one CSBG dollar is buying. So like right now, one CSBG dollar buys 17, like almost a little over $17 worth of local funding, the way we're able to leverage this right now. And so the data has been a big part of that story, and for us, it's all about leveraging data. And then for us in our community, we are a strongly Republican conservative community. For us, there's been a lot of CAP conversation right now around marketing. It's about taking the issues that our customers see and then putting it in a language that is meaningful to the folks in our community that we serve. And so messaging our accomplishments and messaging our outcomes in a way that it is politically meaningful to those in our community, and so that they see their vision and their political goals play itself out in what we do and the outcomes we achieve, I think is really super critical for us.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah. Angel and Belva, what about you in thinking about the work you're doing?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it one more time? You were breaking up.
Oh, sorry about that. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about whether, if bundled services and the way you're approaching this is something that you are using to make the political case for why you should have the support, the ongoing support for community action.
Oh, well, yes, definitely. We want to make sure that we're, maximizing the funds that we are using, and we want to show that, we're not just doing a basic need type service. Anyone can go and, get food from a different place and go get other type of services. We want to show that we're coming together as one to actually provide case management, to actually provide services that, we're going to assess the client situation, to eliminate barriers and things like that of that nature that's going to actually move them, to where they need to be towards self-sufficiency or towards stability. So definitely, one thing I know is that with the community services arena, we don't do a real good job at showing what we do. It's kind of like we know what we do. We know what we do, but we have to do a better job with showing our outcomes and showing our results. And when we do things like that, I believe that when we seek more funding or things like that of that nature. People want to see the outcomes. They want to see, what are you doing? You know, we're kind of like the best kept secret. You know, it's like if you don't need me, then you don't, know about me, basically. But we need to broadcast ourselves. We need to market ourselves, put ourselves out there on the map to show that we are doing all of these wonderful things. And, we're here. We've been here for years. We want to make sure that we're showing all the outcomes, all the positive things that we're doing, have success stories from people who came through our programs, things like that of that nature. So most definitely. Like I said, I know that we all the time don't do a very good job. So with us having this unified tracking system, we're able to track these outcomes, track these results, to show as a community action agency as a whole what we are doing to move the families, our families, the agency's families, towards into stability.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Tawny? Tawny, do you want to add something?
Yeah, actually I do. So if you were to ask any of the staff members here at our Community Action Agency what my soapbox issue is, I think they would pretty quickly tell you stories and storytelling. And I agree with what we just heard from, I think that was Belva, that the story and being able to tell it is really half the battle. And right now, what we have is very limited, siloed data. And so when we look and think about the bundled services concept, we're looking about the outcome for the customer and maximizing that and being able to tell that customer's story, and feeling like that is going to take us a long way on the advocacy side. It's also about efficiencies, because we too are in a very highly conservative environment here in Kansas. So efficiencies and things like local accountability and local control can all be emphasized through real strong outcomes in a bundled services versus a siloed model. And I think that the other piece to that is the fact that the process is more customer driven, that the customer is deciding which piece of the bundle makes sense for them, really has the capacity, if we can show positive outcomes, to create a better feeling about the capacities of low-income people to manage their own lives. It presents a much different story than our current two pieces of legislation that tell them that they can't go on cruises or get their fingernails done with public support money. Here we're talking about low-income people making decisions about what services from our menu are going to move them further down the track. And I think that has real capacity to help some folks turn a corner in their vision of low-income people in our communities.
Wonderful. Yes, it is. I just sort of taking a step back a bit as we come closer to wrapping up. I work with a lot of community action agencies and have worked with this learning community now for quite a few months. And the piece that is always so powerful for me is, first of all, this real commitment to the customer. I mean, you heard that weaving through every presentation, that as we frame the work we're doing, we frame it around how it's going to make life better for our customers, how we can walk alongside them in a more positive way. The other thing that you hear over and over again is the desire to do the work really well. And that professionalism, expertise, good use of funding, all of those things come together as people start asking these questions about bundled services and have been at the core of a lot of our conversations. And finally, there's a real curiosity and desire to weave in new technologies. And I think about what benefits we have from the kind of data entry systems that simply didn't exist years ago. And the new approaches, what we've learned from various studies that talk about the range of issues that affect someone who is low income, the reality of the lives of people who are trying to move to self-sufficiency. That knowledge, those new approaches, those new technologies all come together in what all of the members of our learning group have been really trying to wrestle with in bundling services. So thank you from my perspective for the time you've taken to listen to what we're doing, and also thank you to all our presenters. And I'll pass it on to Hyacinth and Courtney because I know you have a few announcements to wrap up. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mary. And thank you to all of our presenters. And yeah, I'll turn it back over to Courtney. So Courtney, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Hyacinth and Mary, and to all of our presenters today. We appreciate you sharing what you've been able to do in your agency, what those keys to success have been for you, and also just sharing those challenges and being honest, like Mary said, because I think that can help to let other people know that it's real, and but also let people know what can be done as we work together and share some of these things. So we will be, just to let you guys know, I know Hyacinth answered this question possibly earlier, but we will be sharing slides from this webinar. It is also being recorded, so those materials will be posted to the partnership website. And we're also going to be writing up a case study based on some of these, bundling initiatives and based on kind of what's been able to come out of this learning community and the work that people have been doing related to it. So encourage you to be looking out for those materials. We'll make sure that we get them out to the masses as they are complete. But to let you know, we do have some more learning community webinar events. And these are going to be more of that series of the Learning with the Learning Community. So May 24th is the next one coming up, and it's in financial empowerment for families. So that'll be the topic for that one. And then on May 25th, the Trauma-Informed Approaches Learning Community will be sharing their work that they've been doing with all of you. So be sure to mark your calendars for those 2 dates, and we hope to see you on there. So then here's a little bit more information about those two. We also have the National Poverty Trends, session number 6. So this is part of our regular learning community series, but this is an open learning community, so you're welcome to join and listen in. And that's April 13th next week, and that'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So here on the screen, I won't read all that to you because you can read, but that's a little bit of a description about what the Poverty Trends webinar focuses on. Another thing we always like to get is your feedback. So please let us know what you thought of this webinar, what you're thinking of this Learning with the Learning Community webinar series. We want to always make sure that we're focusing our time and resources in the right place to share the right information with you all in the network. So this is a survey link that you can use to give us that feedback. We'd greatly appreciate it. And as always, please feel free to reach out to us at the partnership. I don't think I introduced myself in the very beginning, but I might be a new face to some of you. So I am Courtney Kohler, and I came from the Missouri State Association here just recently. I've been with the partnership for about a month now. So I'm a senior associate with the partnership now. I work under the Organizational Standards Center of Excellence as well as the Learning Community Resource Center. So here on the side, you see the variety of people that work with the Learning Community Resource Center. So definitely feel free to reach out to any and all of us with questions, suggestions, feedback is always welcome.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah,
and with that concludes our webinar presentation for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you once again to all of our presenters. And again, a copy of the slides and the recording link will be shared with you all before the end of the week, both through a follow-up email and on the partnership's website. So keep your eye out for that. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.